Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of Cabinet Committee Local Issues. The first order of business today will be to appoint a chair for the 21-22 municipal year. Do we have any nominations from members?
Could I nominate Councillor Peter McBride, please?
I'll second that nomination.
To confirm that Councillor Peter McBride has been nominated as chair for the 2021-22 municipal year, could the chair please come to the stand?
Yeah. I see what you mean, yeah. Welcome everybody to this first meeting this municipal year for the Local Issues Subcommittee of the Cabinet. We have a few items today, 3 I think. The first of which is on our papers here. Yes, I know. So, membership of the committee. Minutes of the previous meeting, are they accepted as a correct record?
Sorry, Chair, could you just invite Councillor Khan to announce that she's substitute as Councillor?
Okay. Councillor Khan, you're substituting, I gather, for...
Yes, I'm substituting for Councillor Mather.
Thank you. So, minutes of the previous meeting, we accept those as a correct record? Agreed? Yeah. Are there any interest to declare? No, there's no reason to exclude members of the public. Are there any deputations or petitions?
No, Chair, no deputations or petitions received, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the council? Bernard, do you have any questions for us? No? Okay, then we can move to the first substantive item, which is item 8, objections to the TRO proposed permit holders waiting and no waiting at any time for Northgate Almondbury. Are you going to present this first? Thank you.
The first item for objection is the TRO number 19 order 2020, which is no waiting restrictions on no waiting and loading at Northgate Almondbury as a result of a development.
I can't hear you.
Is the microphone not on? Turn that one.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. The TRO for this item has been reported as part of a planning application for this location, and Ken Major's going to give you the details.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. Yes, this TRO has resulted in one objection, and it has come as a result of a development at the Rose and Crown, Northgate, Albury. The planning condition requested that the development shall not commence until a scheme detailing measures to manage parking on Northgate between the site access and no further than 12 metres south east of the site access. This was presented, and we carried out some local consultations with residents who raised concerns about the loss of what would end up being the loss of 12 metres of residents parking in this area if we put in 12 metres of no waiting at any time. So the scheme was revised to include an extra 12 metres further down at the other end of the parking bay, and then the scheme was advertised. During the advertising, which took place between February, 19th of February and the 19th of March this year. There was one objection received from Councillor McGuinn, and he said he is writing to object to the legal order in regards to parking provision on Northgate and Almondbury. The residents have insufficient space for resident parking, and I ask for an extension of the permit parking scheme on the road. There is nowhere for residents on the even number side of the street. They have only been given a like-for-like replacement of space lost in front of the new court building. The residents used to use the car park of what was the Rose and Crown by the owner's permission, and understandably that will be utilised by the supermarket. So I object on behalf of the residents who have insufficient parking near their homes. The spaces would be available for shops customers on Northgate in the daytime for 1 hour. And our response is that the requirements to extend the no waiting at any time restriction by 12 metres is a result of a planning condition and is required to allow delivery vehicles a clear access egress at the site. To accommodate the existing limited waiting needs, were shortened by 12 metres, but we have been able to maintain the current length of permit holder bay.
All I'd add is that whilst we acknowledge the fact that there is an overall loss of parking because the facilities that the residents currently use in the Rose and Crown car park, which has been sort of not been utilised, so the residents have been parking in there, we've maintained the on-street parking provision. There's nothing we can do about the loss of the sort of parking that they've enjoyed over the recent months and years while the Rose and Crown's been operational.
This is an inevitable consequence of the Rose and Crown's new function. Bernard, did you want to add your comment?
Yeah, I think I've got nothing against what the officers are saying. They've done the report. I can't disagree with what they've said. This is the consequence. The Rose and Crown pub had house residents parking for years because it had been empty, disused, not used, and the planning application has finally got passed and they're on with development. So it's understandable that there was a need for the utilisation of space outside on the frontage of Northgate for the supermarket deliveries, and that's where the permit parking was, and they've moved it further down the road. So the officers have done what they have to do, and I'm in agreement. There's a big shortage of parking spaces on the road for residents, and my objection wasn't really against what they'd done. I was just asking for an extension of parking for residents on Northgate. But I understand there's always going to be difficulty in Almondbury because there is a shortage of parking. The houses it's a conservation area. There's really nowhere to go for parking unless you go down to the Shore Start Centre, which is for women, particularly at night. They don't really want to go down there or leave the cars in a car park. So to sum up, really, it's not. I'm not having a go against the report. I'm not really protesting against that. I'm just asking for an extension. But I understand that sometimes in life you can't always get what you want. So I've tried to explain. I've tried to explain to the residents why this is, and this is really I've tried to articulate on their behalf what the problems are. I'm sorry if you think I've dragged you out for no good reason, but I think they needed an articulation of the problems they've got, and so that's why I've come here today. But I understand why the officers have done what they've done, and I'll just leave it at that.
I just think there's like Bernard says, there's parking issues across the whole borough. And traditionally, when old houses were built, it didn't take vehicle use into account, and there is a lack of parking generally in Almondbury. But it's really important that we support the local economy and keep people coming and shopping. It's quite a thriving little village. The council has maintained the length of parking extended it by what it was. So I'm quite happy with that decision. And as for the Rose and Crown, the car park has been inaccessible for a period of time recently due to works going on there. So the situation is what it is.
No, I can't really add anything further to that. I think that clarifies the situation.
Bernard's further comments, I think we can accept that we inevitably have to go forward. Any sort of change of this nature is bound to cause this kind of problem. Therefore, highways have got to look for a compromise solution and so put forward, and I think it's accepted that it's not unreasonable. So, what's the views of the colleagues?
Yep, absolutely agree. I think, as I said, all efforts being made to help.
Accept the officer's recommendations.
Okay, so we agree that. Thank you. So we've overturned the objection. Okay, thank you. Next item 9, I think. Where are we? Yeah. Objections to the TRO on Thorpe Lane, Almondbury. Liz?
Yep, the TRO for this particular TRO was brought forward as at the request of residents with difficulties with parking. So again, I'll hand over to Ken and he'll for the details.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, councillors. This TRO was advertised during February to March last year, and it followed complaints by local residents, including a petition, and site visits showed that drivers regularly parked on the footway on a blind bend on Thorpe Lane. The scheme itself was to introduce no waiting restrictions at this location to prevent the parking and improve the visibility for the residents coming out of the Thorpe Grange Gardens. During the consultation, Councillor McGuinn objected to the proposal on the basis that he believes that the proposal will have an adverse effect on one of the residents here. And our response was the proposed parking restrictions will extend up to the boundary of the residential property that Councillor McGuinn believes to be affected, and as this is the nearest location that the resident can park, having no off-road parking facilities. As a part of the consultation process, prior to the advertisement of the traffic regulation order, we worked to all affected residents, and at no time did any advice comments come back from this resident, or at the formal advertising stage. We never received an objection from. So we would like the councillors to support the portfolio holders' view that this objection should be overruled.
Bernard?
Yeah, after further consideration, I have looked at it more carefully, and this has been an ongoing process. It was 3 years I looked at the first time this arose. It was 2018, and there have been considerable changes made by officers over the time, and I've come to the conclusion. I'm sorry to come after that. But I've tried to get in contact with the person who did strongly object to this, and they haven't got back to me. And after looking at it very carefully again in the last couple of weeks, since I said I was going to bring it to the cabinet, I can see we've had a number of complaints from people about parking on the verge, and the police are reluctant to enforce it because they say there should be double yellow lines there. If there are double yellow lines there, they will enforce it. So I am willing to withdraw my objection because I think the officers have done all they can on this, and I commend them for it. And I'm sorry again that I've brought you in, but I think it was worth articulating. The person was really strongly against this, but when it came down to it, they didn't want to pursue it. And I think they're the ones who are, I think, in my opinion, the people who are maybe doing the illegal parking if the double yellow lines are put in. So I think the officers' recommendation should be accepted, And I'm sorry if you think I've wasted your time again, but I'm trying to be constructive, and I can see that the officers have been constructive in all through this, and therefore I withdraw my objection.
Thank you, Bernard. The objection is withdrawn. Therefore, the order, there's no objection at all to the order, so we can continue with that. Okay. Agenda item 10, the objection to TRO 27, mandatory left turn on Corn Road and no right turn into Queen Street South. Liz?
The moving traffic order number 27 for 2020 has been brought in to support a major traffic scheme from the Transport Fund. The restrictions have been brought in to aid the scheme there, and again, Ken and Mo, if necessary, if you've got any technical questions, both Ken and Mo are here to to present the item.
No, certainly reading through this and following up what Liz just said, certainly from my perspective, I see no reason to reverse this. So, yeah, I would accept the officer's recommendations.
I would accept the officer's recommendations because we can't go ahead with this major traffic scheme without doing this, and there are ample other routes into town centre.
Okay. Sorry, I can't hear. Oh, I have number one. Thank you. Agenda item 11, proposed traffic calming, Jackroyd Lane, New Lathe Hill and Fannymore Lane, Newsom. I think there's a lady who wants to speak on this. Can you tell us your name?
Yes, please. My name is Margaret Shaw. Which was an absolute delight, and so I would like to thank them for that, first of all. Secondly, I would also like to thank them for they have given me my mobility. After having breast cancer, they gave me my mobility. So as you can tell, I have no axe to grind. What I would like to say is it is about the logic of the situation. The road in parts, and I can only really speak for New Lathe Hill, Jackroyd Lane and the Lower Houses Estate, I don't have many problems with. But New Lathe Hill, we have quite a lot of problems. And the problems are due to...
Excuse me, the officer wants to make an announcement with regard to your presentation.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, because the microphone, you didn't press the mic at the start, we couldn't hear you on the webcast. So would you mind just starting again?
Of course.
Just so we could capture it all for the webcast. I do apologise, thank you.
Of course, that's no problem. I'd like to say that I'm going to say thank you to Kirklees Council. The first time, and I'm saying thank you to the Highway Committee. The Highway Committee were absolutely wonderful. I am a walk leader, and I took 600 people, 300 of them, which were children, from Fixby School through Cowcliff Hill Road, and the gentlemen were working on the road. The previous day I had been up there and done an assessment of the route, and there was no sign of any workings going to take place. You can imagine what it was like turning up with 600 people, some with buggies, and to find that the men were working and didn't want us to go through particularly. But the gentleman who I spoke to was exceedingly kind and polite, and he said, no, we can stand on one side while you bring your crowd through. So for that I am grateful and would like to say thank you to the Highway Committee. The second thing I would like to say thank you for is the fact that Kirklees Council have given me my mobility back, and that enabled me to go and actually train as a walk leader. So I have only thanks for Kirklees Council. I do not have an axe to grind, and I feel that that ought to be said aloud. I cannot speak for Jackroyd Lane or for the Lower Houses Estate. I don't have any problems with either Jackroyd Lane or our problem is New Lathe Hill. New Lathe Hill, as you know, we have the councillor that lives at the end of the road, the lovely Sue Lee Richards, and she lives at the end of New Lathe Hill. At the bottom, there is a pavement where it still belongs to Jackroyd Lane, but from there is no pavement on either side. So therefore, as you can gather, it's very narrow. Not only is it very narrow, but the problems that arise actually are not in the narrow bit, which may seem surprising to you. I have heard it said it's a rat run, which is not true. If anybody uses it as a rat run, unfortunately, it's the police, and they're going from Jackroyd Lane entrance down to the Lower Houses Estate, and they go at speed. They have a job to do. If you have to use the emergency services, like I did myself when I had a broken leg, the ambulance came and the ambulance successfully stopped the whole of the traffic on New Lathe Hill, because it is very narrow. If you have a situation where you have the sleeping policeman or the raised bits, then you have an additional problem. And the additional problem would be we have a gentleman who uses a mobility scooter. Because there's no pavement, he can't go on the pavement. He has to go over the hump. Now, if you're using a mobility scooter, you're actually not very stable in life. So there is a possible chance of an accident there. I have lived up there 35 years, and in 35 years I have never known of an accident in front of my house or in the narrow area. I have never known of one. I have known of an accident at the far end, which was near Sue Lee Richardson's house. I have known of one there, but nothing at our end. The other thing that's because the pavement is very narrow, my father always describes it as like Blackpool Prom. People slow down because it's narrow and they don't want to meet head-on another vehicle. So they actually slow down, which slows the traffic down. And I have seen it where there have been two people, one coming from one end and another coming from the other end, and they stare each other out or wait for somebody to reverse, and then they go on their way. The other problem, it's not only the fact that it's said that, again, which is not true, we do have members of the public who do drive erratically, maybe on a four-wheeled vehicle. They would see this as an opportunity to do good take-offs and landings, and the speed bumps would encourage that. It would encourage the bad behaviour, and that bothers me, because I do not want somebody injured in my garden. Now, it doesn't happen every day. It's a it does happen, I'm not going to deny it, but it doesn't happen every day. The advantages of speed bumps, and there are some, would be that it would slow the traffic down at the other two ends, which are the busy ends. The disadvantages, which there would be, and the disadvantage is it wouldn't help in the situation where the few houses from number 85 to 104 live. It would not help them at all if there was a speed bump there, because, as I say, they're already travelling slow, particularly as people have to enter their houses. The other problem that there would be, not only, as I say, is it castigated about it being a rat run. It isn't. It's a matter of getting from A to B. There was an informal meeting with Sue Lee Richardson, and Andrew Cooper was asked to attend. Unfortunately, he was unavailable that day. And a number of suggestions were given. And the number of suggestions that were given were these. I am not speaking in order of preference, it's just as they were suggested. One of them was to make the road one way. Another was to prioritise traffic coming in one direction or the other. Another was to put bollards up at Fannymore Lane end. Another was to to reduce the rate of traffic to 20 miles an hour. And another was to use traffic lights. These were all suggestions from residents on New Lathe Hill. I'm not saying what my preference was. My preference is there, but I'm not saying which one it was. The objection to the bollards was actually by the emergency services, which I find actually rather, how can I put it, difficult to understand. Because as I said at the beginning, the police are the worst offenders for speeding on New Lathe Hill. The residents do not, because we are all aware of the situation. And surely, if the police and the medical people need to go to the lower houses estate, and they obviously are like everybody else, they are entitled to care and protection, would be to go up Dog Kennel Bank. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. I hope I have been laid out the case quite well, and as I say, I have no axe to grind, and I know that any decisions that will be made on a fairness basis. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for that contribution. It's helpful, gives us a wider perspective, a very local perspective, and we do appreciate your balanced comment. The office... make some further comments on what the lady said?
On the options that sorry, Mrs. Shaw, was it?
Yes, love.
And the options that Mrs. Shaw was, obviously there'd be off the cuff sort of responses. I know we've done a lot of work around this. This is a long-standing request. It's been something that's been requested over the years for a considerable amount of time from mainstream highways budgets. It's not coming from mainstream highway budgets. This is supported by the ward councillors, and they've made the request for traffic calming. And Andrew's got all the history. So if Andrew just run through what we've got, and then we'll pick up between us the other options that Mrs. Shaw asked us to, or Mrs. Shaw had put forward.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. Yes, as Lisa said, the scheme is basically councillor derived. It's carried over from the 2019-2020 public realm budget, where councillors were asked for schemes to basically improve their wards. As Lisa said, this scheme's been on the books since, I believe, looking back at the history, there was since 2008. And as Mrs. Shaw said, there was a scheme at one point which involved the closure of the road, and it was objected to by the emergency services. So basically we put forward the traffic calming scheme to the councillors, to all 3 ward councillors, who were happy for us to go forward and consult on it as proposed. The decision was taken to use round top traffic humps at a standard spacing of around 70 metres because this basically avoided the residence accesses, and it was the spacing that achieves consistent speed across a whole scheme of between 20 and 30 mile an hour. Where are we? So that's basically what was advertised. It did generate 2 objections. There was obviously Mrs Shaw, who's spoken today, and there was another objector from New Lathe Hill, again, who cited that there'd been no collisions, and didn't believe that it was the best use of council money, and that the money this scheme that should be spent on this scheme should be spent on other things, including response to COVID-19. The response to that initial objection was that it's the funding was identified pre-COVID-19, and because the funding for the scheme is not coming from a mainstream highway budget, it's not necessarily designed to address collisions, etc. It's more to address like public concern or public awareness of an issue. So basically the scheme was based on what information we hold complaints wise and what information we'd received from the councillors during the process of going through it. That's it at the moment, thank you.
In short, in normal highways budget, this wouldn't have a prayer, but the money being available to local councillors to determine has made it possible. Colleagues?
I find it quite concerning that there may be humps that inhibit mobility scooters, and I'm particularly focused on that one, and I believe there's a stretch of road with no pavement, and I think it's absolutely important that we support people to live in the community and live independently for as long as possible. So I would request that that particular stretch or any other stretches that are similar are reviewed in terms of how everybody would, pedestrians and mobility scooter users would use that road.
Can you? Yeah. The road dumps that have been put in there are sort of round top road dumps that are standard design, DFT approved standard design, and there should be no reason that a mobility scooter should be able to traverse the road dumps without any problems at all. They're only travelling at slow speed. If there was a pavement, it would be easier, but there should be no reason why a mobility scooter couldn't. I mean, we can certainly, if there is somebody up there that is in that position, we can contact them. We can take them to a location where there are these sorts of road dumps, just so that they're comfortable that we can do that. So if Mrs Shaw would like to share or ask permission from the gentleman or the resident concerned that's got the mobility scooter, we could contact them directly to just talk through with them any concerns that they may have, to just box that off for you without a problem. So if I can just pick up on the other things that so the residents, we've been working with local councils on this, as I said, for a number of years, and right at the very beginning when we first discussed all of this, all the options that Mrs Shaw highlighted that were picked up at the residents' meeting were things that had been suggestions that had been made before, and for one reason or another had been put to one side. So the bollards, the closure, the emergency services, as Mrs Shaw said, objected because it would mean that they couldn't get an alternative route. If there was a problem at one end of the lower houses estate, they couldn't get in through the top. And long diversions, a one-way system would create long diversions for the residents themselves, both on both sides of New Lathe Hill. The 20-mile-an-hour zone would require traffic calming anyway to support it. A signs-only 20-mile-an-hour zone they don't work. There's evidence everywhere coming out now that signed only 20 mile an hour, so you need to have some form of traffic calming to bring the speeds down to 20 mile an hour before we do the zone, before we did any sort of traffic calming speed limit changes as a result of. So the traffic calming would still be needed to support. If we took the traffic calming out on New Lathe Hill and maintained it on either side where there is a speeding problem, then there would certainly become a speeding problem in the middle, because the traffic would travel over, traffic calming at one end, traffic calming at the other, and where it's free-flowing traffic without the traffic calming, then if it's not a problem now, then it would certainly become a problem in the future. So we'd leaving a gap in the middle between those two sets of traffic calming. It's aimed, the spacings are aimed at maintaining traffic speeds from one end to the other. And I think I'm not quite sure where traffic lights would, what the traffic lights are. It's not something that we've looked at. It's not something that and the last one, the chicanes, which is sort of priority giveaways at any one location. They rely on steady stream of traffic opposing each other, so that they've got to give way. If it's tidal, which generally New Lathe Hill is, there's a lot more traffic travelling in one direction at certain times of the day and back in the other times of the day, or it's quiet, then the chicanes make absolutely no difference. You've also got a problem with parking with chicanes, because they sanitise a huge amount of parking every time we put one of these in. So wherever we put one in, we have to be really careful for off-street parking facilities and on-street parking facilities, because that would be reduced quite dramatically by the introduction of chicanes. So we try. It's not a traffic calming of choice within residential locations. So whilst we welcome Mrs. Shaw's sort of input and sort of it's all of these were discussed at the outset of the scheme before we settled on the traffic calming that's in there at the moment. So we're limited in our options for traffic calming in this location if we're going to do it at all.
Thank you, Liz. This gives us a wider perspective. I think we now feel that the issues have been explored in some detail. And I think the point that you were concerned about was with I think what Liz said does address this. Again, the communication can take place with the lady concerned. Liz, do you want to add anything further?
Just a few comments, really. I think, yeah, as you say, Chair, I think that we've aired the issue fully. I think points for me is these are always difficult issues, aren't they? I know in my own ward, I get lots of, as Liz will know, lots of people saying there's excessive speed and wanting traffic calming, but no evidence of that. And here we have councillors who've clearly said that there is an issue, but there is a view from Mrs. Shaw, which is, absolutely would not dispute that she's not convinced that that's an issue. So I think these are sort of almost imponderables, are very difficult to judge. But I think the fact that the 3 ward councillors have supported this from the very beginning and continue to support it, as far as I'm aware, unless somebody tells me differently, I think for me gives me a strong indication that this scheme would be appropriate.
I think we've given serious consideration to this, and I do appreciate your contribution, Mrs. Shaw. I think that's helped the committee. I think our intent would be to let the order go through. Although, from our experience in Dalton, traffic calming measures have an awful history, and I think Liz knows exactly what I'm talking about. We spent £750,000 putting traffic calming in, and £750,000 taking them out, because the residents initially said they all wanted them, and when they had experience of them, they didn't, and we had to live with that reality. So it's burnt on my soul, traffic calming. The end of the meeting, thank you.